Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 86. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Tuesday Steelers Nation. As Dave had made mention of last week, we are back to our Tuesday, Friday off-season schedule for now. So just a heads up there, every Tuesday, Friday, we'll have episodes of the Terrible Podcast. And Dave, today is Big Ben's birthday, turning the big 3-9. How are you celebrating?
Happy birthday. Look, I have a feeling that, I don't know, maybe Ben Roethlisberger is celebrating by putting the old John Hancock on maybe a the contract redo or whatnot. Usually, we've talked about quite a bit this offseason that every time Ben usually does something contract related, that stuff usually happens right around his birthday, and here we are, and let's see, exactly what, 2 weeks and a day, I think, from the start of the new league year on the 17th. So, man, we ought to start getting some news here, talking about maybe another possible restructure from Stephon Tuitt, or another restructure with it being Stephon Tuitt. We'll see what happens with Derek Watt. We'll see what happens with Chris Boswell and his contract. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Big Ben, and seeing how much money they can save there on that contract. And are we going to have any deletions? Boy, Vince Williams sure has been quiet on the old Twitter machine lately, hasn't he? I don't know if we can read anything into that. You judge by the Twitter machine. Boy, Juju, it sure doesn't sound great for Juju to get a deal. Mike Hilton seems to be counting down the days to March 17th as well, on top of it here. So here we go. 2 weeks to go until the start of the new league year. And for now, we're clicking down to 2 episodes a week. But obviously, if there's fast and furious action, I'm sure we can adjust this thing back to 3 for a week or so. But sure. Within all that, happy Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll certainly update you on any sort of Ben news. Right now, there is no news. I think we've exhausted essentially every topic and possibility about how this thing could go, and so now we just wait for it to actually happen and then react to the news once it occurs within the next 15 days. Yeah, with Mike Hilton, that's a good point. Everyone talks about Juju and his Instagram tweets or posts and things like that, but Hilton seems to be counting down the days to free agency, so that seems to be an indication that he does not expect to be re-signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with the other cornerback, Cameron Sutton. And I was a bit surprised. I think you wrote it up yesterday. I think Greg Rosenthal from NFL.com had his, top 101 players set to be hit free agency here. And the Steelers had obviously quite a few players on that list, but no Cam Sutton on that list.
No, Tyson Alualu made it, which was a pleasant surprise at 88. But yeah, they had 6, and Sutton surprisingly was not one of those 6.
I'm not, I'm not saying that Tyson Alualu, 100's quite a large list, right? I mean, and within that, I'm not saying Tyson Alualu does not belong on that list. But if you're going to put him on that list, you would think a guy like Cameron Sutton would be on that list, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'd be my top 101, but hopefully he doesn't hit the market in the first place, and the Steelers can re-sign him. One free agent who was on Rosenthal's list, who's no longer on that list, is J.J. Watt, who yesterday surprised everybody by announcing he has signed a 2-year, $31 million contract with the Arizona Cardinals. Hardly mentioned at all throughout this entire process. So much focus on would he go to the Browns or the Bills or go back home to Green Bay. And, of course, Steeler fans clamoring for Pittsburgh to sign him and complete the Watt trifecta. But he's going to go to Pittsburgh West instead. It's the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't want to win a Super Bowl, right? And I guess he doesn't want to play. I guess playing with his brothers for the minimum is just not something that he wants to do. No, in all seriousness, yeah, it was a bit of a surprise of who the team actually ended up being in the Cardinals, but I mean, is anybody surprised that he got more than $10 million? I think specifically 2 years, $31 million? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, $31 million.
And quite 20 something guaranteed in that deal. The NFLPA would have done backflips had he signed for less than 10 million or so, especially considering all those reports that are out there that he was getting that kind of money there. Look, he gets to kind of stay in that warmer climate. I mean, I can't hate him for wanting to play in Arizona, I don't think. And that defense, obviously, with Chandler Jones over there, and they got and he gets to play with his former defensive coordinator as well too. I think that's a big aspect of it. You and I are huge into drawing, connecting dots and things like that. I mean, obviously, you can do this in the J.J. Watt situation here. Are they overpaying him? Is this, does he have a chance at winning a Super Bowl with Arizona? I mean, look, we'll see. I mean, that's obviously a tough division over there in the NFC West and all. But if they can add to that defense over there, play a little bit of better defensive ball, and get that offense going a little bit better, who knows?
Yeah, and you're right. He wanted to play with his old DC, Vance Joseph. I think it's a good fit overall. Him and Chandler Jones is going to be one heck of a duo coming off the edge or line up next to each other or however they set that up over there in Arizona. So, again, it was shocking to see the Cardinals as the team, but I just knew he wasn't going to come to Pittsburgh, and that really made the announcement and the drama surrounding the J.J. Watt, Dakota ring tweets, all that stuff, just a lot less interesting to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over because I'm tired of writing about it. But I mean, there was, what was was it just the fandom kicking in on people to have the great storyline of the Watt? Because I think I wrote on February 2nd or right after he was released, and there was, it just was not. Look, I would have loved to have seen it. I think you would have as well. I mean, it would have made a great storyline to have the Watt brothers playing together in Pittsburgh. But I mean, the cap situation and everything that goes along with that, the financials, there was no way it was plausible. And I found it humorous that people love talking about other people's money, don't they? Talking about, oh, he's got plenty of money, he'll just play for the minimum there. That's not how it works, folks. And I hope this is a valuable lesson to a lot of people that thought there was a chance of J.J. Watt taking the minimum to play in Pittsburgh with his brothers for the potential to win a Super Bowl. It just doesn't always, it hardly ever does it work out that way. Usually if people play for the minimum, it's because they're worth the minimum.
Yeah, not by choice.
And that's it. And last I looked, the minimum of $1.075 million is ways away from the $15.5 million per year that J.J. Watt got. So look, the big thing is it looks like he according to reports, looks like he turned down a little bit more money to play for either the Colts or the Cleveland Browns. So there's nothing wrong with that. And judging by the rotating NFL schedule, and even if it goes to 17 games schedule, it does not look like barring the two teams meeting in a Super Bowl. So, and what a great story that would be. There's no way that the Steelers will face J.J. Watt these next two seasons.
Right. So that saga has closed. Let's talk about players who may become Steelers someday, have a better chance at least with the NFL draft. And according to Justin Mello, who interviewed Auburn wide receiver Anthony Schwartz a couple days ago, Schwartz says that he either has or has already had a virtual meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers among several other teams. Schwartz is known as the Flash for his speed. A track star in high school, I think was the Gatorade Track and Field Athlete of the Year in 2017 or 2018, I believe. And I know you've done a really thorough breakdown, at least contextualization on Schwartz. I'll have a player profile on him in the next day or so. What have you learned so far when you watch Anthony Schwartz?
Well, let's tag team this one first. What did you wrote him up? You wrote up the actual meeting and all. What do you know about his background?
That he's a track guy. That he has insane speed. I forget the exact numbers, and my track knowledge is limited to try to recall some of this stuff. But like I said, was the 2017 or 2018 Gatorade, National Track and Field Athlete of the Year. I mean, this guy's won gold medals and silver medals and competed in some of those under 20 events and put up some really big numbers. And then he was able to use that speed for the football field and had a decent season stats wise at Auburn. I don't think they were overwhelming numbers. I know that maybe they're a bit misleading, and you can probably complement that with your breakdown of him from a tape standpoint. But his background is a track guy, straight line speed. That's kind of his game.
You do see the speed on tape. Let's start there. So you do see that. Now, for his college career at Auburn, he caught 117 passes for 1,400 yards, but only 6 touchdowns over the course of the last 3 seasons. For the 2020 season and the 2020 season alone, that's all I've watched on him. I have not watched a lick of 2019 or 2018 tape on him. For 2020, he caught 54 passes for 636 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, if you do the math there, divide 636 by 54, you get a little bit larger than more than 10 yards per catch there. Now, for the purpose of the contextualization, I watched seven. I mean, that's a lot of games. 7 of his 2020 games. Most of them obviously against SEC opponents, and I contextualized the play-by-play data of the 54 total targets that he had in those 7 games. Now, he had 33 receptions on those 54 targets. So overall, not an awful completion percentage, right? You'd probably want a tad bit higher there, but 33 receptions for 459 yards and 2 touchdowns. And while he did, I'm really big into average, depth of target. I really think that's a great stat in today's kind of new forward-thinking kind of analytics and all like that. Now, he had a very healthy average intended air yard distance of 9.2 yards past the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's healthy. I mean, he's targeted, a little more than 9 yards down the field on those, 54 total targets. However, his average air yard completion distance was just 3.55 yards. So in other words, if you were to fall forward, Alex, you'd be halfway there, right? 3.55 yards was his average air yard completion distance, and that was really kind of aided on top of it by his 2 touchdowns were both long bombs. One came against who was it? LSU, and I think the other one came against Tennessee. Both of them deep down the field. I think the air yards on both those were like 45 and 41 respectively. He got loose over the top, but they were blown coverages on both of those plays. All right, so if you look at average, the completed air yards on both those were like, what was it? What's the average of 45 and 41? It'd be 43 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that high, and his average completed distance was 3.55 yards on 33 receptions. Thank God he had that, or else we're talking about we have him in Ray McLeod territory as far as average completed yard distance. Now, they used him a lot. The thing that stuck out where you could possibly see him being a fit with the Steelers, A, obviously the athleticism. Mm-hmm. B, how he was used. They used him in motion quite a bit, some return motion, orbit motion, all those kind of ways. And a lot of his completions actually happened behind the line of scrimmage. So very Matt Canada-ish, maybe, if you will. The most disappointing part, I think, overall, not a huge route tree, at least on targets. You don't see a huge route tree on him. You don't see really any contested catches on him. And I think the most troubling thing, at least on his 2020 tape that I saw, is where are the down? Is this a guy that can use that speed and route running ability to get open down the field, and more importantly, can he make the catch? That's the thing that stuck out to me. Where are the down the field catches? I mean, he's good after the catch. Obviously, I think overall had a nice average, after catch. But a lot of those catches too happen with him behind the line of scrimmage. So he's getting, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards. but the play is starting behind the line of scrimmage there. So that's one thing when I invite you. I'll be interested to get your take when you look at him. I would imagine you'd look a little bit at his 2018 and 2019 tape, but usually, if the Tiger's got stripes, it's a Tiger. So I would be a little bit surprised if you found much more on him down the field in, let's say, per se, his 2019 tape.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and I think he could be a fit in the offense. I'm just looking at Schwartz's stats right now. What's interesting with him, 6 career receiving touchdowns, 7 career rushing touchdowns. So really used in that kind of maybe jet type role or, in the flat, something like that, which could be incorporated in Canada's offense the way that they tried to use Ray McLeod, as you mentioned, or even Ryan Switzer a couple of years ago. So the question with Schwartz will be, is he just a track guy with great speed and that kind of was able to enough to get by in college, but that's not going to be enough to get by in the NFL. If you run 4.3 in college, you're going to make plays because most guys don't. In the NFL, you need a more complete skill set than just that track speed. So it sounds like he's going to be, I'm not sure, early day 3 type candidate, but someone to keep an eye on for sure.
Just coming away from his 2020 tape, and I know someone say kind of a poor man's Tyreek Hill. I just don't see, I see the speed, but I don't see that explosion. I don't see that ability down the field, that real kind of shiftiness, that you see with Tyreek Hill. I just don't see it. And, I think some people say, oh, this is a 3rd or 4th round guy. Well, I mean, maybe he is, but I mean, at least what I saw on 54 total targets from last season, I'm seeing maybe at best early day 3. So we shall. We know the Steelers like these athletic profiles, right? I mean these sparky kids, and obviously he is that. I mean, man. Wouldn't we normally about this time of year have the combine numbers and all like that?
Nice.
Really feel handicapped right now at this point in time. But we'll see what he, if any of his pro day numbers eke out, and if we can get a pretty decent profile on him that way. I get the attraction to him from an athletic standpoint. I'd like to see a little bit more on tape. So we'll revisit this after you break him down here this next week.
And it's interesting, and I don't know Auburn's situation too well if they just had a really talented return guy or not, but he didn't do any returns at Auburn. Usually for a 4-3 guy, he'd be in the kick-punt return game, and does that speak to maybe a lack of quickness and other traits outside of speed that may have limited him? I don't know, but I just want to point that out. Usually when you have a receiver that runs 4-3, he's involved in your return game in some aspect.
And, kind of they used him at backside X. They used him on the other side in some bunch and some slot. They moved him around quite a bit from what I saw on that on his Auburn tape. He's obviously not a true Z. He might have the speed for it. You could use him down the field that way, but I don't view him as a true Z. But he did move around in that offense, and it seemed like he played numerous positions, and I did not look at any of his runs, but that was smart for you to point out that he had, 6-7 touchdowns, I think,
7.
Running the football during his career. Once again, not 170-something pounds soaking wet, too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a guy a couple of years ago, Ryan Davis out of Auburn. He was a different type of guy, more quick than fast, so he wasn't the track star that Schwartz was, but similarly used and kind of a similar expectation and profile, and his career never really panned out. Again, we're not going to say because he didn't work, this guy can't work, but sometimes those guys don't always make that jump.
When you read something, you read about a meeting like this, and you kind of read a couple hot takes on Twitter real quick, and you get all excited to get into the get into the tape, and then it's like sad trombone, I based on what I thought that I knew heading into watching this tape, I was disappointed.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So I'll have to watch him. I have him in my my queue to do a profile on him in the next day or so. Speaking of the draft, Dave, my second Steelers mock draft dropped on Monday morning, so we can go through it now and get your opinion on the players I slotted to the Steelers, starting with number 24 overall. This time I went with a different Alabama player. Went Alex Leatherwood in my first mock. I went Najee Harris, the running back at Alabama. I think a pretty chalk conventional pick. That's certainly I'm far from the only person to predict Harris going to Pittsburgh as of right now, but clearly they like the guy. Obviously they want to upgrade the league's worst rushing attack last season. And I think Harris is going to be someone that if he's available and on the board, will be hard for the Steelers to ignore.
Yeah, look, I mean, from what's out there right now, which, obviously not a whole lot right now, right? Because of everything going on, and I mean, we had the Senior Bowl, and obviously the one report, but we've talked several times over the years. Who does it? Don't the Steelers, and really all 32 teams for that matter, don't they meet with everybody at the Senior Bowl and all like that? Obviously, it's a little bit different when you get to the combine because the amount of formal quote unquote meetings that you can have in prospects, which I think didn't it go from 60 down to like 45 as far as that goes. But I mean, just based on the clues out there, based on the Rooney bat signal says you guys better get this running game back going. Obviously, the Steelers running back situation going to probably lose James Conner out of that bunch at the very least this year. You look at what's behind them. In Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland Jr., it's hard to get really excited about those two guys right now. Even though I think a guy like McFarland, it was essentially his what does Colbert say, his senior season there because he was an underclassman and things like that. You would think
I think it would have been his junior season. He was a redshirt sophomore.
Actually, junior with him. And so obviously you would think he'd get used a little bit more in his second season there. But I mean, you start trying to connect the dots as best as you can. You would think that this team, is going to draft a running back in either per se the first or second round, and Najee obviously is I guess depending on who you ask, the deeper you get into this thing, the more debate you're probably going to have. People saying, is Najee really the top running back in this draft? That's obviously discussions that you and I will probably be having for the next couple months as well too. But I guess long story short, I get why you put Najee Harris in that top spot. And look, I you know how I feel about the running back position being drafted, in the first round. But I even think in our new Terrible Take, the Terrible Take podcast, daily takes that we're putting out 5 days a week here for listeners. You had the first one up on March 1st there, and you talked about his age and him. What is he, 23 right now? And why that shouldn't be a concern, and really why it shouldn't be a concern overall drafting a running back in the first round.
Right. For Harris specifically, he'll turn 23, I think, a week from today, March 9th. And, typically that is older than the prospect the Steelers generally gravitate towards. But I think it matters less for a running back because, listen, if you're drafting a running back in the first round, really just in general, you're not expecting to get a second contract from that guy. He's going to be 4 years, fifth-year option, and then, put him on the pile and start the cycle all over again. So, whether he was 21 or 23 wouldn't matter too much. Now, that's a good argument to not taking a running back in general in the first round, and that's a fair point. I'm not saying I would even love to take Najee Harris and sprint to turn the card in. I think he's a really good player, but obviously there's a ton of debate about is taking a running back worth it in the first round. To my mind, probably not, but I went Harris because I think this team likes their tackle situation better than I do, assuming they re-sign Zach Banner, which almost feels like a certainty at this point, and we know they want to upgrade the run game. So that leaves you two other options to do that if tackle's not going to be in that first round conversation. It's center and it's running back. Center, is there a guy at 24 that's worth it from a value standpoint? Maybe you could argue Creed Humphrey. You could argue Landon Dickerson if the medical comes back good on him. But I think you can argue Najee Harris probably better than you could a center. So that's why I landed on Harris. He's a 3-down guy. Tomlin loves his bell cows, his workhorse backs. And Harris, to me, he can run, he can catch, he can block. He can be that every down player that Mike Tomlin has always sought after.
When you look at specifically what Pro Football Focus has on him, I kind of weird. You look at their NFL draft projection on their initial draft guide, they have third round on Najee.
Do they expand on why they have him lower than others?
Not really. They say the common rule for a thumb for running backs is usually to declare as soon as possible, but there's a real chance Harris made himself some money with his play this year. He doubled his touchdown total from 13 on the ground in 2019 to 26 this season and maintained his efficiency despite a massive workload. Harris' ball skills keep him inside our top three backs despite not being much of a home run threat. His catch radius is one of the biggest you'll ever see from a running back. He should feature in any passing game. So, they might just be looking at overall grade and scoring and comparing it to other backs and along those lines. I mean, I think you and I both agree there's no way Najee Harris lasts to the third round, right? I mean, he's going to be drafted into the, really anywhere from probably 24th overall from the Steelers spot to maybe the 24th overall pick in the second round. I think there could be, just because we've seen how some of these running backs that people thought slam dunk go in the first round end up slipping to the second round. Do we want to use this spot to expand on Najee? Do we want to talking about explosion rates and all like that, or do we want to go through your mock draft and then circle back?
Yeah, let's run through my mock, and then we'll go back and talk about the running back position at large and the study you did on explosive run rates.
All right, and really the only people you considered other than Najee, as you mentioned, were Creed Humphrey, Landon Dickerson, or Zaven Collins, and it feels like Zaven Collins is going to be that lone kind of defensive player that people say, but what about Zaven kind of guy?
Right, because I do think he'd be a really good fit in this defense, but do you want to focus on defense with so many holes on offense? I think push comes to shove. The focus on the run game, the Art Rooney mandate wins out, and they'll go offense in some form or fashion at pick 24.
All
right. Round 2, number 55, the only holdover from my first mock. I bumped him up a round, which might have been a little controversial, but I went Trey Hill, the center out of Georgia. I think he fits everything the Steelers look for in trying to find a replacement for Marquise Pouncey. He's big at 6'4", 330. Rarely do you see a center of that size. He began his Bulldogs career as a guard and then moved to center and has primarily played at the pivot. He's physical. He's a mauler in the run game. I think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. He can pull. He can get out into space. Not necessarily at a Pouncey type level, but it's functional. And, SEC competition, battle-tested, good starting experience, 26 career starts, but also still a true junior. So he's got that youthfulness the Steelers still generally like overall. A little bit of medical with him, had surgeries on both knees at the end this past season. They seem to be minor in nature, nothing that I don't think will create long-term concerns. But Trey Hill, plug and play, day one starting center. So you get Harris at 24, you get Hill at 55. I think those are two big steps in improving your 32nd ranked run game.
What do you think about this center class? I mean, generally every year the center class isn't great, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good.
Do you? A year ago, remember people talking about who is it? The Washington kid, Nick Harris, right?
Mm-hmm. And, I thought you were going to go with T-Rex to start that conversation.
Yeah, and where did he? How he fell, and then obviously the Wisconsin kid.
Yiddish. Yeah, he had medical that pushed him down.
Right. So, I guess you've already got considering Creed Humphrey in the first round along with Landon Dickerson. I would be surprised Landon Dickerson goes that high because of the medical. And I think you and I had a brief conversation about he's got an injury. I mean, he looks good on tape. Don't get me wrong. And boy, it'd be nice if the Steelers could draft that whole Alabama offensive line, right? The way they kind of were opening up holes this past season here. I kind of get to feel Landon Dickerson's a second round guy. I also feel that Creed Humphrey's kind of a second or third round guy. So to me, that would kind of maybe is Trey Hill better center than both those two?
I don't know if he's better than Dickerson from a tape standpoint. I really like Dickerson, and all it's going to take is one team to clear him medically, and I think you have a first-round caliber player. So I don't know if Dickerson will make his way to 55. Obviously, he could, but I have a feeling that he won't. Humphrey, I don't think he would either. But I think Hill, just overall, just focusing on him specifically, is a really good fit for this team.
What trait do you like best about Trey Hill?
The physicality, the finish in the run game, getting a strong push up front, because those are things the Steelers team absolutely needs. They got to be more physical. They got to be able to run their feet. They got to be able to drive through the whistle and win in those short yardage areas. And that was, to me, one of the biggest areas they were missing last season, both in pass pro and in the run game. And I think Hill will solve those, not solve, but fix those things at least to start.
All right, carry on.
Round 3, going with edge with Joe Tryon out of Washington. Now, the question with him is that he opted out of the 2020 season. And we know that from Kevin Colbert's words, I think before the season started, the guys that didn't play for one reason or another are going to be hurt in this evaluation process. But I think edge depth is really important for the Steelers. We saw the value of them taking a third-round edge guy in Alex Highsmith with their second pick in this past year's draft. Highsmith is a rotational guy, and then taking over full-time for Bud Dupree after his torn ACL. Tryon has that bigger mold the Steelers generally look for. He's listed 6'5", 262, although in Tom Mead's report, he's got to get a little bit stronger, play the run better, and just play to that size more. But a really productive 2019 season, and if he does fall to 88, I think he provide really solid edge depth that this defense needs.
Do you get the feel that he can add to special teams right out of the chute?
Yeah, I think so.
With the athleticism and all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he can.
All right,
and so, yeah, do you think, because we don't talk about edge too much in terms of a need, because you have your starters in Highsmith and Watt, but there is nothing behiing those guys right now. And they got to add in some form or fashion, whether that's a vet free agent or drafting somebody or both.
I mean, I would imagine, I think not that it's saying much, but they probably re-signed Cassius Marsh to compete for the minimum amount there. More than anything, one of the brighter spots about Marsh is what he gives you on special teams,
Right.
But they do need. I mean, Ola. Other than that, you really don't have anything. So either you're going to have to, maybe they'll address this with a backup veteran guy. It would make sense for a minimum kind of 3-4 year guy to be signed by Kevin Colbert, and then that at least lessens the onus on getting one at a certain spot in the draft. But it would not surprise me at all if they did address position during the draft. I'm not convinced it would be as early as round 3, but I could certainly see them taking an edge at some point.
Yeah, but if you wait until later day 3, then A, does that guy make your team? And B, is he just ready to step in as a number 3 rotational guy? And I think you want to go higher on that to make sure you have somebody that you think can do that job the way Highsmith did right away. Because right now, Ola can't rush the passer and Marsh can't play the run. If you could combine both those two guys, maybe you have something there, but they both have big deficiencies in their game. And so I think, if you rely on either of those guys to be your number 3, you're going to be in trouble.
All right, well, I'll go on record as saying I still will be surprised if they address the edge position before round 4.
All right, fair enough. In round 4, with the first pick here, I have Amari Rodgers, the receiver from Clemson. This may be a touch low. Obviously, I think he could be a later day 2 candidate, but if this team loses Juju, then I think Rodgers is a great slot option. A little Steelers connection as well. His dad was T. Martin, the one-time Steelers quarterback, and just a good route runner, a tough dude. He's short, but he's not small. Productive 2020 season, and he could honestly be a day 1 starter if Juju leaves.
He's going to the Ravens. Depot.
Every year.
Obviously, not a lot not to like. When you look at his tape, obviously he has the pedigree that the Steelers like as well too. Was a Senior Bowl kid, right? So got that going for him as well too. And obviously, and you hit on it. I mean, we're going to see what happens with Juju Smith-Schuster here in the next couple of weeks here, and if he winds up going elsewhere. It's really based on the Steelers' track record. I mean, only twice since Kevin Colbert's been in Pittsburgh, I think, have they not drafted a wide receiver. So if Juju goes out the door, you can almost guarantee that they're going to add a wide receiver in some way, shape, or form during the draft.
Yep, absolutely. And even if they re-sign Juju, I think they probably still draft one at some point, just because that's what Kevin Colbert does, although probably not in the 4th round. In the other 4th round, I'm doing a projected comp pick here because that seems to be pretty safe for the loss of Javon Hargrave. I have the Steelers taking another Senior Bowl kid who had a pretty good week in Mobile, Cameron Bynum, the corner out of Cal. Doesn't have great length, but good size overall at 6 foot, 200 pounds. I think really a pure man cover corner, which is the Steelers system right now, with Justin Lane struggling his first 2 years, Joe Hayden probably entering his final year. as a Pittsburgh Steeler, I think Bynum's good depth on the outside.
He play any inside?
Just against twin sets, twin wide receiver sets, but he's really going to be an outside corner.
It'd be interesting to see which way they go. Obviously they're probably going to draft at least one corner this year, right? You would think.
Mm-hmm.
And will that be an inside guy, or will it be a more slot suited guy, or will it be a guy more suited to play on the outside? It'll be kind of an inclination. Or a way to look at James Pierre as well too. They seem to be pretty high on him, but obviously not a lot of tape to go on with him. And Justin Lane, we'll see what happens there. Not looking too great when you got a guy like Pierre. We're talking about Pierre more than we're talking about Justin Lane right now. Obviously, Joe Hayden getting another year older here. We'll see what happens with Cameron Sutton. Obviously, this offseason as well too. In the next couple of weeks, see whether or not they're able to retain him. I've just watched, I think, just a play or two after watching or after reading your mock draft on Bynum, so I don't know too terribly much about him.
Yeah, he's a good athlete for his size. I think he's got fluid hips. He's able to turn and run and mirror, and he's able to press the line of scrimmage. I mean, the length isn't great, but I think he competes at the catch point well. I think he has plus hands. Has made some plays on the football. So, again, maybe not a top-shelf cornerback ever, but it really reminds me of Steven Nelson. I think that was a comp that someone had mentioned for him after I did my profile on him. I kind of compared him to a Bashad Breeland type, but Steven Nelson, a lot of similarities between Bynum and Nelson.
Real gritty type player?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got to do a better job of getting off blocks in the run game. The lack of length does hurt him there, but he will support the run. He can be a physical, more of a cut-down tackler. Maybe not quite at the level of the way Nelson or Joe Hayden play the run, but overall, I think he plays it pretty hard, and he has a good frame to support the run game.
All right.
Round 6, number 189, and I'm waiting long on tackle here because I just get that feeling they're not going to prioritize tackle the way that maybe I feel they should right now, but I'm going with Tommy Doyle, the offensive tackle out of Miami, Ohio. Big dude at 6'8", 326. A bit raw, but a riser in this process who honestly, I see most sites I see right now have Doyle going late day 3. I think when all is said and done, this guy could go as early as late 3rd round, to be honest with you, Dave. But a fast riser, had a really strong 2020 season, only played 3 games because Miami had so many games canceled this year. Started his career at right tackle, moved to left tackle. Good athlete, good feet for his size. Another guy that loves to finish and strain in the run game. Great job getting movement on down blocks. Has to be a more consistent, refined player overall. I don't think he's ready to start out of the box today, but a lot to work with there, Tommy Doyle and local kid, Matt Kidd. And so that's always exciting for Pittsburgh.
All right.
John Bates in round 7, number 210. There's some good blocking tight ends in this class. John Bates is one of them who has good hands, never going to be a tremendous athlete or anyone like that, but a really solid inline blocking tight end the Steelers are going to need because, again, behind Eric Ebron right now, there is almost nothing.
Get the kind of feel that they're going to try to look for the Matt Spaeth type this time around, right? Especially with Ebron under contract for at least one more year.
Yeah, and they could do that. Really, if you want to do that, I would rather go sign a veteran, guy that can block. But I just get a tight end, draft somebody because they're gonna have to add. Because if it's not behind Ebron, you have Zed Gentry. He's played 60 career snaps and coming off a knee injury, and Raiders, did well in his cup of coffee last year, but he doesn't have a lot of staying power right now. And beyond that, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about.
All right, fair enough. You've been crying for a tight end early the last couple years, and just unless they where do you stand on Freiermuth right now? You don't view him as a slam dunk first round guy, do you?
I think the problem with Freiermuth is that it's likely too high to take him at 24, but he also probably won't be there at 55. So it's in that weird middle ground where you probably don't get him either way.
Right, I would agree on that. I don't view him as a slam dunk. I'm not sure I would. I'm almost positive I wouldn't take him at 24, and then you do kind of wonder if he would still be on the board by the time it swings back around in the second round.
Right, because my guess is he'll be the second tight end off the board behind Kyle Pitts, and will the second tight end last till pick 55? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, round 7, finishing out with a safety, James Wiggins out of Cincinnati. Had a good 2018 season, missed 2019 with a torn ACL, but came back this past year. Just kind of standard safety depth here, to be honest with you, because Sean Davis a free agent. Behind Minka and Edmonds, not a ton. There is Antoine Brooks Jr., but just adding a safety to give yourself some depth to finish things out.
Makes sense. Makes sense for sure. And then obviously kind of up in the air about what's going to happen. We'll see what happens with Jordan Dangerfield. You kind of hope that they would get him back, but there's probably no guarantee at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll come back in some form or fashion. I don't know exactly what that'll look like. Contractually probably, because he's restricted free agent?
He would be. Is he restricted?
Or is he unrestricted? I'm forgetting. He's gone through the whole tender process. I've lost track of where he's at. I thought he was restricted.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to double check.
But either way, I think he will come back because he's your personal protector. You're up back and probably has more value to Pittsburgh than likely any other team on the market.
What did I?
Yeah, I don't know. Or is he unrestricted? I can't remember it honestly at this point.
Hold on here, and I'll tell you. Let's see, Jordan. Double check. I can't. They got 19 of them. He's restricted.
He is restricted. Okay. So yeah, the issue with him is you probably don't want to spend a tender on him because that's a minimum of $2.6 million.
Yeah, you'd have to sign him to a 2-year deal and give him kind of that $2.5 million total for him to put in his pocket so that you can drive down that first year cap hit here. So, but I mean, there's no movement on that yet. I mean, obviously 2 weeks to go. There's still time. But on the flip side, what is he going to be worth on assuming you let him hit free agency? What is his free agent market value? Yeah,
I mean it's pretty minimal. I mean he's a valuable player, but in terms of the market and what people are going to be throwing money at least that first wave, he's not going to really get anything. So I think they bring him back. It just won't be on the tender. They'll have to redo the contract with like you said, a 1 or 2 year deal for less money or spreading that money out at the very least.
All right, and you did not address the inside linebacker position. Is that something you were kicking yourself for afterwards, or no?
No, not really. I mean, not until there's more movement there. Of course, if they release Vince Williams, then that would change the equation potentially to some extent. But I see edge as a bigger position of need right now in terms of depth and inside linebacker. I mean, yes, if Zaven Collins is there at 24 and the board breaks the right or wrong way, depending on your perspective of things, you can take him. But there isn't a screaming need for me to take an inside linebacker because Devin Bush is coming back. You have Vince Williams still on the roster as of today. Even if you cut Vince, Spillane's going to be your starter. He looked good last year, better in coverage than I expected. Marcus Allen will have a second year going into the position. UG3 is a dart throw at this point, but he's at least still around. So, I mean, if they take one day 3, you can argue that. But what would you rather have an offensive tackle? My day 3 picks. Would you rather have an offensive tackle or inside linebacker? I'll take the tackle. Would you rather have a tight end or an inside linebacker? I'll take the tight end. Safety, I'll take that over inside linebacker. So I don't really see this big, clamor for an inside linebacker unless you want to take one early as your plant your flag starter next to Devin Bush kind of guy.
All right, fair enough.
All right, Dave.
How many of these kids were Senior Bowl kids? Najee.
Najee, Rogers, Hill was not. He was a junior. Bynum was there. Tryon, I don't believe, was there. So that's Harris, Rogers, Bynum. That's 3. Bates was there. That's 4. And Wiggins, I don't think Wiggins was there. At least 4.
How close do you think they stick to seniors and Senior Bowl and guys that did not miss the 2020 season?
I mean, my expectation is that they will basically follow and take those guys, but it can vary case by case. Last year they went, Chase Claypool, Alex Highsmith, those were Senior Bowl guys, and they took Kevin Dodson. He wasn't even invited to the combine. I mean, the first guy that was to be drafted that wasn't invited to Indy. So they took a guy without a ton of information on him from a pre-draft, process standpoint. So it can be a bit unpredictable, but I do think obviously, as they tend to do, they will take at least a couple players who are in Mobile.
All right, especially early, right?
Yeah, especially early, and the guys that they go watch in person at Pro Days this year. We kind of go back to that since we missed out on those fun Blues Clues this past season.
And they're probably not going to stray too far from the big schools. I think Kevin Colbert has said as much, that they're going to go where the most kind of prospects are there. So I mean, look, there's obviously going to be, some surprises in here, from a Mac guy here and there. They can't have a draft without a Mac guy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a lot of chalk in this draft. I think they're going to stay away from the huge medical concerns. Obviously, super sparky like Kevin Colbert likes. Production, I think, is going to be key. We've drawn the line before on some wide receivers, right? If they didn't reach that. What was it, 100 reception mark, at least for their college career. Now, obviously, there's the bite of the 2020 season might impact a little bit, but the Steelers are all about production, sparkiness, Power 5, and mix in some Mac.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Dave, let's talk about more draft here. And you had a great article, as you do. How many years you been doing this now? Explosive run rates for running backs. It's been a kind of a tradition for you, breaking down just some of the stat standpoint of these backs and how many big plays they created, and what were some of your takeaways there?
I would just say that from the aspect of it gives me an idea of maybe what to expect on the tape when I get into some of these guys. I don't think. And this is part of the conversation I think that's worth having, if I can find where I did with that article here real quick. Is it already on the second page? Or did you bump it?
It might be on the second page. Yeah, I just typed in run and it came up.
The thing with, okay, there it is. The explosive run rates. I looked at the explosive run rates, and by that, I'm looking at both the 20 or more yard runs and the 10 or more yard runs, and getting the percentages off, for the entire college careers of these top running backs here. I think the thing that stuck out the most to me, when compiling this list, Najee Harris only had a 20-plus yard run percentage rate of 4.1%. And of the, how many backs did I do in this? 11 running backs on this list overall. He had the third lowest 20 explosive run percentage of all carries. Now, he did have 638 carries. I think that was the third most amount of carries of the running backs that I put on this list here. Is it a big deal? Well, they drafted Le'Veon Bell several years ago, and he obviously came out of Michigan State with not a huge percentage of explosive runs. That obviously carried over into his pro career, right? What was one of the huge knocks on Le'Veon Bell as a professional? It was his ability to provide the explosive run of 20 yards or more. Is that a big deal, or is it a bigger deal of the 10-plus yard gain, where Najee Harris clocked in for his career 21.2%, third most on the list behind guys like Ramondre Stevenson, who I've watched zero tape on, and the other guy, Javonte Williams, who I've watched a lot of tape on. How big a deal is it overall? Is there any correlation? To me, looking back at some of my previous numbers, I don't think you can draw any hard, fast conclusions that, well, look at his 20% gain numbers, and that means X. I think all it means is that you shouldn't expect a lot of explosive runs out of these guys. But as far as quality back and effectiveness and all, I don't know if there's much correlation between the actual 20-yard stat.
Yeah, that was going to be the question I was going to ask you, to kind of back things up and talk about what is the value of this stat. I think it's an important piece of the pie, but is it the say-all, end-all? And I think obviously neither of us think that it is that, say-all, end-all stat.
I do think, though, it's one. If a back meets a lot of the other qualities that you're looking for in a back, successful, ability to create One of the things I don't think a lot of people study about is the ability to create behind the line of scrimmage, right?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing to have big runs, after big holes, and one thing here's one thing that people can look forward to today. I looked at all 40 something runs of 10 yards or more that Najee Harris had last season. Boy, he had a lot of big holes, Alex. I mean, there's a lot of times where he's not getting touched more than 6, 7, 8, 9 yards down the field. Is that his fault? No. But there's not a lot of 10 or more yard runs last season from Najee where he couldn't drive, where he's untouched, and really not from his own doing, if that makes sense there. You obviously can't punish him for that, but one of the things, now there were a couple runs that really impressed me. I think one, was it against Auburn? I put it up on my Twitter feed last night there. We do see some instances of him having to create behind the line of scrimmage and still be able to, let's say, gain the edge and get 10 yards. I guess, long story short, when you're looking at the 20-plus run percentage number, that might, if you got two backs that are fairly equal, you really need to look at those 20-yard runs, because to me that's stealing at the NFL level. If you get a running back that can rip off a 20 or more yard run for you, more times than not, that's stealing. That's a bonus right there. So, backing that up a little bit, if you look at guys like Javonte Williams, 6.8% explosive play rate, but had a 23% 10-plus yard gain. And then another guy, obviously, like Travis Etienne, had an 8% explosive play rate of 20 yards or more and a 19.5% 10-yard rate. Those guys belong in the conversation with Najee Harris at the very least. And that's an obvious, right? I mean, you probably didn't need these numbers to know that probably the top three backs in this draft are Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, and Travis Etienne. But it is a little bit interesting when you look at actually how these 10 and 20-yard runs happen.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. What I would say with Harris, though, and where I think that can be a little bit misleading, is that I think he can create, and sometimes you don't see that on the plays that gain 10 or 20-plus yards, but you see it on the play that should have lost 3 but went for 4. You know what I'm saying? So the play where you create and make something out of nothing doesn't always result in that big explosive play. It just might avoid a disastrous play behind the line of scrimmage. And I think Harris has the skill set to create, and not that he had to do it a ton at Alabama because he played behind the best offensive line in football, as you said. But I think when he was asked to do it, I think he was capable of doing it.
I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to scout and break down a running back when he's just getting the ball and running, straight into huge lanes. You know what I'm saying? And there was now don't get me wrong, there is you will see some in these 40-something runs of him. There's not a lot of it, but him having the vision and then making the cut and things like that. And then obviously, look, how many times have we seen him hurdle guys?
Right. There's times where he's getting to the first level, but he's creating at the second level when he needs to create, and so he's showing the ability to do that. Maybe just not at the first level.
Right. And what you don't see in his tape is a stick the foot in the ground kind of, give you 9-cent change type, cut on a dime, give you 9 cents change.
Yeah, obviously he's 6'2", 230. He's not going to be quick the way that Etienne or Kenny Gainwell is.
But I guess my biggest takeaway about this stat is it telling overall, especially when it comes to the 20-yard number. Right now, I have no reason to correlate it into, well, this, then that. I just think it's another selling point if a back meets all these other qualities, then you can look at, well, look, this guy also can register the 20-yard gain.
Sure.
That kind of thing. But I think it'll be interesting to look back at maybe the 10-yard, take a deeper dive into some of this 10-yard correlation, because obviously a back in the NFL level, more apt to get 10 yards than he is 20 yards, right?
Yeah, I think you're right in saying, Najee Harris had a 4.1% 20-plus yard run rate in college. I doubt that number gets a whole lot better in the NFL. I think that's fair to say that number is probably a good representation of what he'll be in the NFL. I compare him almost identical to Le'Veon Bell, who we both know was not that home run hitter. That was really the only concern in his game, as you mentioned, not creating the big plays. I think it's interesting to see how similar Najee Harris's numbers were to Josh Jacobs. I mean, If you look at the numbers you posted, Najee Harris 20-plus run rate was 4.1%. For Josh Jacobs, it was 4.0%. Josh Jacobs' 10-plus yard run rate was 19.9%. Najee Harris was 21.2%. So a little bit more margin there, but still really similar. And obviously Jacobs turned out to be a really fantastic back for the Raiders. So I think the other thing with Harris is that you're drafting him not just to be a runner. You're drafting him as a blocker and a receiver. In terms of him as a receiver, I mean, he's got wide receiver hands. I mean, and that is really, really special to see. So it's not that you're getting Harris just as a pure runner. You're getting him as that complete package, and that obviously adds a significant amount of value to his game.
Once again, and you're right, Josh Jacobs, but obviously a lot fewer carries overall. I think 251 overall at Alabama, whereas Najee 600 and something like that. Does the volume, the 600 number, worry you at all when it comes to Najee? I'm doubting not, because didn't Le'Veon Bell have damn near close to 700 carries during his college career at Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I understand the argument about the wear and tear, but just like his age, it doesn't matter, because you're getting 4 years, 5 years out of him. I mean, it's not like you're expecting Najee Harris to be on your team 10 years from now. And again, that is a reason to not take a running back in the first round. I understand that, but putting that aside, the wear and tear doesn't matter as much, because you're really not expecting to give any running back a second contract.
I mean, you obviously want to get the 4 years out of him, and boy, if you could get a running back to the 5th-year option, and obviously pay him that money and then get the production to go along with it, right, that's a bonus. But in today's NFL, I mean, the Frank Gores just aren't there, right? Those longtime producers in today's NFL just don't exist. Usually, as we've said several times, you just end up throwing these running backs on the pile. That's really the only down. One of my main concerns in the fungibility factor is, the Steelers just love drafting these first-round players and then making them almost 10-year guys in the NFL. You're probably not going to do that with Najee Harris, but is the short-term return, and by short-term being 4 years, worthy of sacrificing the long-term player?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the ultimate question here when you talk about just the value of a running back in general, putting Harris aside. Because even if you draft, say, Javonte Williams, who only has 266 career carries, what are the odds he gets a second contract from you? Not great, I would say.
Yeah, very, 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 very slim. Yeah. Period. With any running back, I don't
so that's why I'm saying I don't.
Right.
So the number of carries doesn't bother me as much, because whether you're talking about a guy with a lot of carries or less carries, it's not going to probably change your outlook in terms of his long-term future.
I just worry about the fungibility of the position and the injury history of the position. Those kind of things. I mean, obviously, if you can keep him healthy, he's got the pedigree. And you would expect him to play 75-80% of snaps right out of the chute, and you would expect him to be a 1,000-yard rusher right out of the chute, and you would expect him to catch at least 25 to 30 balls right out of the chute, and you would expect his pass protection to be, fine right out of the chute. So I mean, if he can check all those boxes, which one of the biggest things I have yet to look at is his ability to create behind the line of scrimmage. That's the only thing I haven't looked at really with Najee.
Yeah, I think he can do it, but you're right about the fungibility of the position. And to me, I'm someone that believes you build your team inside out. If you don't have a good enough offensive line, it doesn't really matter who your running back could be. Give me the talented offensive line and an average running back as opposed to the average offensive line and the talented running back, I think, who get better results with the former than the latter. But again, Harris, a really complete player. You're drafting him to be more than just a runner because the guy can block and the guy can catch at a really high level.
Yeah, I'd like to dig more into this 10% run rate. I think that's worthy digging down into with some correlation, because obviously I don't think 20 is. I think 20 is just a bonus. Boy, if you can get a guy that can bust those runs off. Look at DeAndre Swift. He had a 20%, 10% run or 10-yard run rate and a 6.8 20-yard rate. That guy looks like he's going to be in the NFL for a couple years, right? Kind of a head scratcher when you get to a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, right? Especially judging by, did they make a mistake there? Did the Chiefs make a mistake there?
I don't know if they made it. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Obviously we got 1 year and he had kind of a little bit of a durability issue there, right? And really a production thing overall. I mean, this kid only had, what did he have? 18 total 20-yard runs at the college level, and I mean his 10-yard number was just 14.6%. I mean, right now, based on everything we know about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that wasn't a great choice by them. And he was the first running back overall taken in the draft, was he not?
He was, yeah. He was at the end of the first round there. So I don't know, but is there a correlation between the two? Is there something in his game now that's causing that issue? I mean, I have obviously studied what he did at KC enough to know if it's just an injury thing. Is it a rookie thing? It could be a million different things. It's hard to me to distill into one problem. I mean,
he was obviously a top back, but was he slant? Did you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going to be the first running back off the board?
No, most people thought it'd be Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift, and so Edwards-Helaire was a bit of a surprise being the first back off the board.
And the thing about Jonathan Taylor, I remember, I think going back and looking at really both him and Dobbins, a lot of nice, runs, but big holes that they were driving through as well too. So, what sets a guy like Najee Harris apart from guys like Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins?
Well, I mean, from that standpoint, the 10% run rate, which was 21.2, which was higher than either of those two guys.
Right.
So, and I think they're just more complete players overall. Was there any back that you studied from the 2020 class that surprised you with their numbers? The Ramondre Stevenson numbers were excellent. Led that group that you selected in 20% or 20 plus run rate, and then was tied for first in runs of 10 plus yards, which is really impressive.
I haven't looked at any of his tape yet.
Yeah, I know. I think Josh had the profile on him. He's a bigger guy, but has a lot of quickness, a lot more change of direction, lateral agility than I expected. And so that's a guy that I probably need to learn more about, because just the clips I saw, I believe that was from Josh, were pretty impressive.
All right. I will look a little bit deeper into him.
Were there any other players where you sat there and said, I want to look at this guy a little bit more based on the data that I'm seeing?
Quite, I want to get in and look more comparative because it's going to obviously take time to contextualize these. I want to look at the 10 plus yard runs of Javonte and Travis Etienne and see how much breaking tackle ability and how much creating is there in there comparatively to a guy like Najee Harris. So, right. I mean, obviously, look, I'm not going to be able to get too far deep into these guys, right? I mean, we got, you just don't have enough time to do that. But I think at top of the position, especially at running back, it deserves the fact to have some comparative contextualization in these explosive, 10-yard or more runs, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Just good to get some stats, some data, just to kind of level the playing field and just get away from the tape for a moment at least and look at some objective, data points and merge that with the tape.
Right.
Who was the other guy? Trey Sermon had some good numbers as well. That's a Ohio State kid, big back. I think the Steelers could like as well. Talking about Trey Sermon.
Trey Sermon, what about him?
Mm-hmm. I think the Steelers will like him. I mean, they generally still like their backs big, and he was productive, Ohio State kid, so that's someone that probably is on their radar.
All right.
All right, Dave, anything else from your run rate study that you wanted to mention?
No, I think that's got just one, look moving forward, just trying to find some correlation there specifically in the 10-yard category.
Right. All right, Dave, let's go back to the Steelers present day. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, who used to cover the Steelers as their beat writer, had some guesses and some assumptions about how the offseason is going to go. Nothing too shocking from what Fowler had to say. He says he would be pretty shocked if the Steelers re-signed Bud Dupree. I think it's a foregone conclusion. Dupree is gone. But Fowler said, do not close the door entirely on Juju leaving the Steelers. Says there's still a chance that he could come back. Obviously, price will be the big sticking point there, but Juju is not out of Pittsburgh just yet.
Not yet, but we shall see. Look, I think the way we've kind of looked at this is the only way I envision him being able to maybe doing something with Juju is doing something that the Steelers normally don't do with these contracts, and that's particularly guaranteeing, past year one there. If they're able to do that, based on just the mock contract that I put out, several weeks ago, I think way back in October there on Juju at around a $17 million number. I think, in fact, I gauged him at around $17.5 million. Produced like a $6.5 million first year cap hit there. It's hard to get around that the way the Steelers do contracts traditionally. So let's say his market value comes in at around $16 million. All right. Even so, the way the Steelers do contracts, you're probably looking at a cap number at least over $5.5 million, and that's tough for the Steelers to kind of to fit in there. So unless they're able to do something outside the norm when it comes to guaranteeing more than the first year, or barring the final cap number coming in at $185 million or more, it just the math alone tells you that it's going to be very tough for this team to fit him in. And not only that, just the Steelers don't have, as we've talked about, I think this gets kind of pushed under the rug quite a bit. The Steelers don't have a long history of paying top or near top 10 money to a wide receiver on his first contract. If you look back at AB, where did AB slot way back when he got his first deal? I don't think it was top 10. When he signed that $48 million deal or whatnot. I don't think it was top 10 money, but they had him kind of over the barrel because he was was facing a restricted free agency at the time.
It was a little different. It wasn't right.
It was a lot different situation there. So If you just look at his and it would be great if they get Juju re-signed, especially under let's say a $17 million number, but just the economics and the history and all just tell you that they're probably not going to go that way.
So you're pretty pessimistic about Juju coming back.
I mean, I have been all along. It's not impossible, but man, it really doesn't look very plausible right now either.
Okay. So if you had are you more pessimistic about it than the way Fowler framed it, or about the same? How would you categorize Fowler?
I mean, to me, it's really going to come down to if this team's willing to do something a little bit more creative contract wise. Just looking at it from the Steelers standpoint of the historical and the cap side of things, I mean, you have to say it doesn't look good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
I don't want to entirely rule it out, but I mean, it does not look good at all, and really that's been my thought on this for a while when it comes to Juju's future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. I know Fowler said the Steelers, even though they would like to re-sign him or have some interest in re-signing him, aren't going to be in a rush to do it. He kind of made a reference to maybe letting the market play out and see what other teams offer and go from there. He says, quote, "I wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh let that play out, and then they can always come over the top with an offer if they feel like they can sign him there, but I don't think they're going to rush to sign him any minute." So it sounds like even if a deal happens, it won't happen until, I guess, after the start of free agency is the way that he's framing it, or at least after the tampering period begins a couple days before the start of the new league year.
To me, this is just Fowler just guessing.
Yeah, I mean, nothing.
I got to be careful here, maybe, or do I? I don't think he's the insider that most people think he is. How's that?
Well,
shots
is that
fired.
Careful? Is that being careful or
no,
not being careful?
You know
I couldn't
me.
tell. Okay,
you know me enough. Yeah. I speak my mind.
Well,
I could guess the same thing, right? And put it out there the way he kind of framed what he had to say about Mason Rudolph, about Juju, about Dupree, and to me, just kind of say, what was the word you used? Boilerplate, kind of stuff there. And to me, it doesn't seem like there's too much insight in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a lot of hedging. This could happen. It could not happen. Those are kind of the choices.
May or may not happen. Check back.
Right, which are the options here. He also says the Steelers would like to re-sign Cam Sutton, but at a hybrid type price, which again is the thought of Mike Hilton's going to be too pricey for them. So can they get Cam Sutton at a cheaper rate? I think that's going to be the hope. But if he wants to be paid like a starter, whether that's an outside corner or slot, how will the market value him and his future and his position and his role will be, I think, a big indicator of whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers can and will re-sign him.
I like the chances of them getting Sutton. I didn't at one point, but the closer I get to this thing now, I like the chances of Sutton coming back.
Has something changed for you to
I think when you look across the landscape at the cornerbacks and all, and you look at the reduction in the cap and how that might impact the middle to lower tier free, unrestricted types and all like that. I think it plays in the Steelers' favor more so with a guy like Cam Sutton. Filer, I'm still not as optimistic about Filer as maybe you are. Alualu, I think it's cut out perfectly for the way the benefit contract that I laid out for him. So I really like the chances of Tyson Alualu. I think restricted guys like Jordan Dangerfield, we just talked about the ways to get him back. There's obviously Bud Dupree. That was never going to happen before or after the injury, in my opinion. Who else is unrestricted that have a good chance? I mean, I've been in the camp that it's not likely for Juju all along, and all you need is an Excel spreadsheet to figure that one out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Banner, another one that's almost certain to come back.
Right, Banner, and that should line up along the line, something similar to maybe what Dangerfield gets. I think you give him, potentially a 2-year deal. You put a little bit of money in his pocket early on to kind of keep that cap. Because look, if I don't think you just run out and sign Banner to a 1-year, $3 million deal, right? Because
why would Banner take a multi-year deal? He wants a 1-year deal, become a starting left tackle, and then hit big next year.
Well, if he does, then you got to say, look, here it is. It's a match of last year because we got to keep your cap number down.
I think he would rather do that than take a 2-year deal. Yeah, he'd rather take the 1.5 than take a 2-year deal worth $4 million and potentially cost himself a lot of money 12 months from now.
I don't know. The NFL's not for long, and he's coming off an injury. He can see how quickly it changed. Would you rather put the $4 million in your pocket right away?
Yeah, I think he's a bet on yourself kind of guy.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, with Sutton, I think again it comes back to how teams value him. The Steelers probably will value him as their starting slot corner in 2021. Could there be a team on the market that says, we really like you on the outside, Cam Sutton. We think you can be a starting left or right cornerback in the NFL, so we're going to play you more and pay you more. And could that be a way that they lose Cam Sutton because of that? I think that's possible. So I think it's just interesting to see how the Steelers value him and, more importantly, how the rest of the league views and values Sutton. That'll determine whether or not he comes back. I still think he will come back, but that could be the reason that he leaves.
The old all it takes is one team, right?
Right. I mean, right. Because Sutton's played everything. So how do you view him? Do you view him as a slot guy, a dime guy, an outside guy? A million different ways you could slice it.
Look, I think the key thing that guy is dangerous when he gets around the football too.
Yeah, and he's made big improvements last year and 2 years ago as a tackler, as a run defender. Big strides there. In addition to him always being a good cover corner.
But true or false? Better chance of retaining Cameron Sutton than Mike Hilton.
True. I think I've been in that camp for months now. Yeah, definitely true. Because I say again, the way Hilton's tweeting too makes it sound like this dude is counting down the days to free agency. So it does not sound like he's at least negotiating with the Steelers right now.
Right.
And he deserves to get paid, so root for that.
It doesn't sound like Zach Banner says he's shutting down his social media until he signs a contract. To me, that sounds like there's something going on there. Some sort of negotiation maybe going on. He just wants to go on lockdown, make sure not to say or do anything to ruin ruin his chances there. And Juju chiming in, wishing he can get one. It doesn't sound like anything at all is going on with him. But look, 2 weeks is still a lot of time, and hopefully, man, I was hoping that by tomorrow at 4:00, the 2 week notice, we would have the cap number.
Right. I don't think you could negotiate with Juju even if you wanted to until you know what that cap is, because you really don't even know how to frame the contract or the path until you know what that cap number is. So the fact there is a negotiation with Juju doesn't shock me in the least.
Right. Me either, and it probably shouldn't shock him either. And how many times have we seen the Steelers go last minute on some of these guys and get them signed right before free agency starts? Sure. Once again, just because I don't like the chances of Juju being re-signed, I don't think it's impossible, and especially if the Steelers are willing to maybe do something outside the norm with their contract, which Art Rudy kind of hinted might be the case. We'll certainly see here in the next couple of weeks.
Yep, we will. And that cap number, still waiting. I know the NFL just final, or at least reportedly finalized the deal with Disney, but it doesn't sound like these new TV deals are going to move the cap number a whole lot for this year at least.
We'll see. I mean, it sounds like all of them are going to come together here really quick right before the start. And I'm still holding out a sliver of hope that and I probably shouldn't. I'm still holding out a sliver of hope that there's some sort of maybe impact that maybe at least pushes his cap number to $185 million, man. At this point, I think $185 million would be a huge win, right?
Yeah, it sounds like around 181-ish, I think, is kind of the projection right now. So we'll see. We'll hope for good news, and we'll hope for just news in general, because I still don't know when they're going to announce this number.
Right. Man, 2 weeks, you think you got to let teams know, don't you?
Yeah, but I do think
let's wait till these TV deals, and maybe they're waiting to get those eyes, I's and T's crossed, or what? I's dotted or T's T's dotted and the I's crossed, or whatever. We'll see. I would think they would have to know this number here. I mean, how can you not give the team a number with 2 weeks to go?
Right. At least I think teams have a much better idea of where the cap's going to come in about than they did, a month ago. I think they know it's going to be in that 180 to 185, which is a better range than 175 to maybe it stays flat. That was impossible for teams to work with.
Okay.
All right, Dave, anything else? That was all I think I had written down. Anything else you want to discuss, or we can get to read your emails and close out today's show? Do you know what you're doing for your terrible take today? Do you still have any idea what you're talking about?
I still don't.
Right.
I'm working on it. It's gonna be a fight for me twice a week. I have a feeling, but we'll see here. All right, let's get to some emails here. Kaylin Clark writes in, "Hey guys, what the heck happened to David DeCastro? I don't think the Steelers should cut him, as some sites have suggested, and I do recall him starting the year injured, so he may not have been completely healthy, but I'm worried he might not bounce back as a run blocker, considering he is now 31. Do you guys share my concern with his 2020 struggles, or are you more optimistic he can return to near all-pro level? Love the work you guys do. Let me know if you are hiring. I'm a recent college grad with knowledge in PHP and web design, looking for experience." All right, we'll keep that in mind, Kalen. What are your thoughts on David DeCastro, Alex?
Yeah, he wasn't good last year, much like the rest of the offense line. Now, I do wonder and do believe that a lot of that has to do with the injury, but I'm in the camp, and I made it clear before, of do nothing with David DeCastro. I would not cut David DeCastro. That's just creating a bigger vacancy, and if it was injury-related for his struggles last season, then he should bounce back for 2021, but I would not extend David DeCastro either. I want to see how the season plays out, see if it really was injury related, and if he will bounce back in 2021. So I would do nothing with his contract.
Going to be interesting to see if the Steelers feel the same, because there's a couple of million in cap space to be had there when it comes to David DeCastro, and if you don't get something done with him, and he does have a good season, then you're just going to take the tag. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So is it going to happen before the start of the new league year? Probably not, but I think he's definitely a guy we're going to be having conversations about between now and the start of the regular season as to whether or not this team will extend him.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting question, but if it was me, I would just do nothing with that contract right now.
All right, arm strength from Andreas writes in, how do some quarterbacks have better arm strength than others? Is it purely genetics, throwing motion, and can it be improved on?
It's both. I mean, there's always going to be a genetic element to it. The guy that is 6'5", 240 is going to generally have the better arm than the guy who is not, 6 foot, 200 pounds, although not always. It can there's lower body mechanics, there's torque. Usually they say throwing is built from the ground up. So your hips, your feet, things like that can impact your arm strength overall. So there are things you can work on technique wise, but there is also obviously just, God-given ability that either you have or you don't have.
Yeah, I throwing motion and can it be improved on? Not by much if it can, right?
The throwing motion is that what
he says? Throwing motion and can it be improved on when it comes to arm strength? I mean, how many times do you see arm strength be improved considerably coming out of college?
Yeah, I think you can improve it slightly, but you're never going to turn someone with a below average arm into somebody with a great arm just by working on technique. You might make it a little bit better at the margins, but you're never going to transform their ability in that way.
I mean, obviously, a lot of people use former MLB pitcher who Tom House, right? I think Mason Rudolph. I think several of them use them, and obviously mechanics can help you probably in some area to some degree. But if there was a secret for these kids coming out of college and hitting the NFL level and improving their arm strength and ability to spin the football velocity and all like that, you'd be seeing a lot more of it, I think.
Yeah, I think exactly. Mason Rudolph doing that flappy arm warm-up drill is not the key to success that other quarterbacks are just simply missing.
All right, let's see here. What else do we have here that we can get to? Brian writes in, knowing the evaluation process will always be filled with mistakes, how concerned should we be in the future selection of Ben's replacement that the Steelers had Mason apparently graded as a first rounder?
It's hard to say. The draft is art, not science. What other quarterbacks did they grade high that they didn't draft? What was their grade on Patrick Mahomes and guys who struggled? I mean, it's impossible to say just based off of that one guy. I think it's a very small sample size, clearly. So I really don't put a ton of stock into that.
I mean, look, really any position overall, but I mean, more so than not, these guys miss, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, you're going to have probably 5 of these guys. How many of these guys are going to end up being top 10 in the NFL quarterbacks that are drafted this year? 2, maybe?
Yeah, certainly not all 5 guys who are going to go in the first round will end up being, billed as playing as they were billed.
You just got to try to, limit, go off what you know and traits and metrics. But I mean, how many, at some point we're going to run across the next, maybe not to the degree of Tom Brady, but at some point there's going to be a 5th, 6th round guy that, boy, how did they miss on him, right?
Yeah, well, you look at, Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott as later round guys that ended up being great players. So, that guy might exist in this draft class too, but trying to find that guy and developing that guy and playing that guy and turning it out that way is obviously very difficult.
Paul Brown talks about Mac scouting here. He says, Dave and Alex, with the Steelers and all NFL teams limited when it comes to scouting for the upcoming pro days and combine, I would assume this would affect the small college programs. Colbert has been quoted saying Tomlin/Colbert won't be able to attend as many pro days. For example, with 5 picks in the last 5 years, would this affect the MAC draft class in terms of teams taking a chance on a player as a result of seeing a higher percentage of draftees from Power 5? With you knowing how the Steelers draft, would they guess and reach for a player they don't know too much about, or is it a meticulous process where they need to know everything about the pick? Well, I would hope they wouldn't be doing any guessing and reaching, right? I mean, I would think that they'd stick to a lot of things, Senior Bowl guys. I mean, obviously you don't have the rest of the All-Star games this year, but Kevin Colbert doesn't come across to me, although he has, there has been over the years, Kevin Colbert's taken chances on guys with the questionable character aspect, right? But not so
but they've
much,
gotten away from that recently.
right? But not so much them not knowing a lot about the player. I mean, COVID aside, I mean, it's obviously going to be a learning process throughout all this. I mean, I would assume that they're still going to know a lot. There's not any guesses that they make. I would think there would be highly educated guesses in this COVID world, right?
Yeah, this overall, even in these COVID times, or this draft process is still meticulous, no stone left uncovered, whatever the phrase is. I'm probably mixing it up, but you get the idea. They're still going to know a ton about these guys. But, I don't want to sit there and say that they're going to be so, cookie cutter, Power 5, Senior Bowl guy. Look what they did last year. They took Alex Highsmith out of Charlotte with the second pick. They took Kevin Dotson, who was not invited to the combine, so they had less information on him, had to rely on different avenues. So I don't want to sit there and say that they're only going to focus Power 5 Senior Bowl. They could stray from that, and they'll still have scouts that go to the MAC. Dan Colbert, I'm sure, will still be at Miami, Ohio's Pro Day. It just won't be Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, because those guys are going to focus on going at the big events where there are a half dozen prospects to really watch closely and maximize your opportunity. So those still have Steelers and scouts at these pro days, just like past years. It just won't be Kevin Colbert, who granted was never showing up to a MAC Pro Day in the first place, even in non-COVID times.
And what real quick about Highsmith, though, he was an all-star guy, right?
Right, he was, yeah, but he wasn't Power 5. So, I don't want to sit there and say, well, he's not Power 5, so the Steelers won't take him.
No, but I mean, and don't we at least didn't the Shrine Game at least announce the guys that were going to be invited there? Does that make a difference?
I don't think it does. They had a virtual Shrine Game where they had meetings and speakers and stuff, but I don't think that's going to really impact the draft prospects of those guys too much from the Steelers standpoint.
I'm willing to bet, though, after the dust clears with this draft, we're going to be able to say Power 5, Sparky, you know what I'm getting at, or a relationship, pro day relationship with the school. Pre-draft, we might be, assuming we get a lot of information on there, which that's probably dangerous to do at this point. Any player that the Steelers seemingly have a lot of interest in, maybe in a virtual pre-draft meeting, you could probably read a lot into that. I would think, even more so than bringing the kid to Pittsburgh kind of error.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to be the biggest clue. Alex Highsmith, they met with virtually. We knew they were high on him because of that phone call they had. So they're going to be selective about who they talk to and who they Zoom with. And so that is probably your biggest indicator of all, where the antenna should go up one if we hear those reports, however many we hear. Those are the players you should really focus on, because I think they talked to – I think Colbert said they had a Zoom meeting with every single draft pick they took last year.
And unfortunately, we're just probably not going to get a lot of information, though, right? It's not like them be able to tattletale when a guy walks in the door at the Southside facility,
Yeah, we'll just have to rely on those guys talking to the media, and hopefully they get asked about, Anthony Schwartz. We found out because he talked to some guy in the media and said that he had a meeting with Pittsburgh. So hopefully we get more of those reports.
And because of that, even though not hugely high on his tape so far, I'm interested to see what you see when you break him down. But I mean, Schwartz, may the Schwartz be with him, because right now you have to consider him as a legitimate later round guy for the Steelers because of that report.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you immediately did the contextualization on him, why we're immediately going to do a draft profile on him, because those are the guys you should really focus in on, just like when they brought those kids to Pittsburgh. They so often, every single year, they took 2 or 3 guys from that list of players they brought in to the facility. So it's the same rule applying for Zoom calls.
All right, one last one from Gary Grady. Says, hey, Dave, check out tight end Luke Farrell out of Ohio State. Good blocker and likes to block. Ohio State doesn't use tight ends like other programs. Ain't that the truth? But he was blue chip talent coming into college. 4-star kid. Farrell can catch the ball. Good luck tackling it up high. Late round pick. Obviously somebody, I look forward to getting a little bit deeper into his tape over the course of the next week or two as well, too.
Yeah, we had the report on Farrell go up. I think that was from Tom the other day. Also one on Sean Byer out of Iowa, who seems like an interesting guy as well. And just as a quick sidebar, in Pittsburgh sports news, Sidney Crosby is in COVID protocol. So hopefully he's okay. Will not be available, obviously, for tonight's game.
All right. Anything else to wrap up here?
Nope, I think that's everything. Again, yeah, be sure to check out the Terrible Take. That'll go up every weekday, I should say, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And we will be back with a podcast, the long-form version, on Friday.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. And also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. And for $25 for one calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of the site as well, too. We're working on a lot of improvements for the site. The Terrible Take, hopefully being one of them as well throughout the off season here. And we appreciate everybody who reads and listens and interacts with us as well, too. So with that, and until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.